Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme, Text 23. Yatra Kale Tu Anavrittim Yatra Kale Tvanavrittim Avrittim Cha Eva Yoginaha Avrittim Chaiva Yoginaha Prayataha Yanti Tam Kalam Prayata Yanti Tam Kalam Vakshyami Bharatarshava Vakshyami Bharatarshava Yatra Kale Tvanavrittim Avrittim Chaiva Yoginaha Prayata Yanti Tam Kalam Vakshyami Bharatarshava Yatra Kale Tvanavrittim Avrittim Chaiva Yoginaha Prayata Yanti Tam Kalam Vakshyami Bharatarshava. So in this first line, Yatra Kale Tu Anavrittim, if you say it won't match in the meter. We have to say Tvanavrittim, like one word, Tvanavrittim. Then it will match in the meter. Yatra Kale Tvanavrittim Avrittim Chaiva Yoginaha Prayata Yanti Tam Kalam Vakshyami Bharatarshava Yatra Kale Tvanavrittim Avrittim Chaiva Yoginaha Prayata Yanti Tam Kalam Vakshyami Bharatarshava
Yatra Kale Tu Anavrittim Avrittim Chaiva Yoginaha Prayata Yanti Tam Kalam Vakshyami Bharatarshava
Yatra Kale Tvamanavrittim Avrittim Chaiva Yoginaha Prayatayanti Tam Kalam Vakshyami Bharatarshava
Yatra Kale Tu Anavrittim Avrittim Chaiva Yoginaha Prayatayanti Tam Kalam Vakshyami
Bharatarshava. Just one clarification that it is not Tu Anavrittim. If you see that's TV, that letter there, TV, Tva Anavrit. So when the Tva and Ana join together, it becomes Tvanavrittim. So say it as one word, then it will fit in the meter. It is all mixed in one word. Tva, correct.
Yatra Kale Tvanavrittim.
Yes, correct. Tvanavrittim
Avrittam Chaiva Yoginaha Prayatayanti Tam Kalam Vakshyami Bharatarshava
यत्र काले त्वनावृत्त्यम्
यत्र काले त्वनावृत्तिम्
आवृत्त्यं चैव योगिनः
आवृत्तिं चैव योगिनः
पर्यातयान्ति तं कालं
प्रयातयान्ति तं कालं
वक्ष्यामि भरतऋषभः
वक्ष्यामि भरतऋषभ
Online.
यत्र काले त्वनावृत्तिम् आवृत्तिं चैव योगिनः
प्रयातयान्ति तं कालं
वक्ष्यामि भरतऋषभ
यत्र काले त्वनावृत्तिम्
आवृत्तिं चैव योगिनः प्रयातयान्ति तं कालं वक्ष्यामि भरतऋषभ यत्र काले त्वनावृत्तिम् आवृत्तिं चैव योगिनः प्रयातयान्ति तं कालं
वक्ष्यामि भरतऋषभ. Anyone else online? यत्र काले त्वनावृत्तिम् आवृत्तिं चैव योगिनः प्रयातायान्ति तं कालं वक्ष्यामि भरतऋषभ. Synonyms. Yatra, in that. Kale, time. Tu, but. Anavrittim, no return. Avrittim, return. Cha, also. Eva, certainly. Yoginaha, of different kinds of mystics. Prayataha, one who goes. Yanti, departs. Tam, that. Kalam, time. Vakshyami, describing. Bharatarishabha, O best of the Bharatas. Bharatas. Translation. O best of the Bharatas, I shall now explain to you the different times at which, passing away from this world, one does or does not come back. Translation with repetition. O best of the Bharatas, I shall now explain to you the different times at which, passing away from this world, one does or does not come back. Purport. The unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Lord, who are totally surrendered souls, do not care when they leave their bodies or by what method. They leave everything in Krishna's hands and so easily and happily return to Godhead. But those who are not unalloyed devotees and who depend instead on such methods of spiritual realization as Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga, etc., must leave the body at a suitable time and thereby be assured whether or not they will return to the world of birth and death. If the yogi is perfect, he can select the time and place for leaving this material world. But if he is not so perfect, then he has to leave at nature's will. The most suitable time to leave the body and not return is being explained by the Lord in these verses. According to Acharya Baladeva Vidyabhushana, the Sanskrit word kala used herein refers to the presiding deity of time. Thus ends a wonderful transcendental purport. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. It's a very interesting verse that is setting the stage for the next several verses in this chapter. So let us look at this verse one more time. Yatra kale tvanavrittim avrittim chaiva yoginaha prayata yanti tam kalam vakshyami bharatarishabha. So here there are two words which are opposites of each other, anavrittim and avrittim. So avrittim means to return, and anavrittim is to not return. So a situation where there is no return. So there is something that is being said in regards to returning or not returning. Anavrittim, avrittim, cha eva. Yoginaha, prayata yanti. Prayata is prayataha, one who goes. That's how it's translated, one who goes. So when a yogi who passes away, who goes, or prayata, who goes away, in certain situations he returns, in certain situations he does not return. So in Bhagavad Gita, where it is talked about going, prayana kale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram, that always refers to passing, quitting from this body, traveling away from the body. So prayata yanti tam kalam, kalam is time. So yatra kale, then again prayata yanti tam kalam vakshyami bharatarishabha. So this word kalam is also appearing twice. One is kale, other is kalam. Vakshyami means I am about to describe, I am going to describe to you. Bharatarishabha is, the best of the Bharatas, Arjuna. So that's referring to Arjuna. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that he is about to describe the different times, yatra kale tam kalam. So he's about to describe the different times at which, when a person passes away from this world, which means quits his body, then apparently looks like whether he returns back to this world or he does not return to the world depends upon the time of leaving the body. So that is what Krishna is about to describe in the subsequent verses that we will see. But in today's verse, he's setting the stage for that, and he's trying to explain that there is a concept of suitability of time, based on which if you select that specific time for leaving this world, then you will not return. But if you do not select that time, then you must return. So that is what he's saying. And now he's about to explain that in the next subsequent verses. So it's very interesting purport also that Prabhupada has given, because after all this is a verse that is simply setting the stage for the next verses. By itself is not revealing exactly which times one should pass away so that one does not return. Nor does it say at which time if you pass away you will be forced to return. It doesn't give any of those details. It's simply saying that I will tell you about that now. But even for such a verse, just see the wonderful transcendental nature of the Bhagavad Gita, that every verse has got such significance. Prabhupada has given a very beautiful explanation for this verse, because he is anticipating certain questions that occur in the minds of the reader even while reading this verse, even before somebody goes to the next, because Krishna, can you hear me? Yes. Sorry about that. So, anticipating the questions that a reader might have while reading this verse, Prabhupada is giving this explanation that just in case somebody was thinking about this verse and thinking, oh, now I have to start worrying about what time of the day and what time of the year, what time of the month I have to decide. After all, it's not in my hands when I will quit my body. I'm trying to follow the principles of Krishna consciousness that have been given, but and we have been told that by practicing this, one will go back home, back to Godhead. But there is this new curveball which has been thrown at me about deciding what time I should leave my body. So that question is being nipped in the bud by Srila Prabhupada. He's saying that the unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Lord, who are totally surrendered souls, they do not care. And this word unalloyed devotee has already been spoken of in the previous verse. Yesterday there was a class on this unalloyed devotion. Bhaktya tu ananya labhyas. Bhaktya tu labhya. Bhaktya labhyas tu ananya. Bhaktya labhyas tu ananya. So this unalloyed devotion, or ananya bhaktya labhyas tu. So when a person attains to unalloyed devotion, then the person does not come back to this world. That has already been described. So therefore Prabhupada is reminding the reader that you have already studied that before. So this does not apply to you. The unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Lord. If you are an unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Lord, and which yesterday was described, that when there is a metal that is mixed with another metal, that's called an alloyed substance. When a substance is completely pure, it is called unalloyed. It is a unique term that is being used in a negative, double negative sense. All over Srila Prabhupada's books, the word unalloyed has been used. It is a direct translation of ananya. Anya bhilashita shunyam ananya labhyastu bhaktya labhyastu ananyaya. Ananyaya is the exact word. So this unalloyed devotion, you may say it is, you can just say pure devotion, it's the same thing. Those who are totally surrendered souls, they do not care when they leave their body or by what method. It is not important to them. Because they are leaving everything in Krishna's hands. Krishna decides for them how they leave the body, what happens to them next, whether they return to this world or they do not return to this world. That is not a concern of a pure devotee. The only thing that concerns a pure devotee is, what does Krishna want from me? In what way can I serve Krishna? Even if Krishna places such a person in a hellish circumstances, immediately unalloyed devotee will start distributing books in that hell. So that, and hellish does not only mean that you are being burned in some pot of oil. There are hellish conditions all over the universe. There are hellish conditions here also. There are hellish conditions in actual hellish planets. But one way or the other, by using whatever means that is available at that person's disposal, unalloyed devotee of the Lord immediately engages in distributing the transcendental holy names of the Lord wherever that person finds himself. And therefore it is not the concern of the devotee at what point or what time of the year, what time of the month, which time of the day the person leaves the body, because the devotee is not even particular about being liberated or being in a comfortable situation or coming back to this world or not coming back. A person who is a completely unalloyed devotee of the Lord is already with the Supreme Lord. Therefore, there is nowhere else for him to go. The Supreme Lord decides what happens to that person. So because they leave everything in Krishna's hands, it also relieves them of the great burden of having to plan their own lives. It's a great, great burden that is lifted from the shoulder of a person. Because for having surrendered everything to Krishna, they simply have no longer any anxiety to plan their lives, which is what the rest of the world is spending every moment of their life. Hardly anybody is living in the moment. Even if that person is sitting on a beach, with maybe a margarita in the hand, with the feet put up under a cabana, the person is actually wondering, oh, when I go back, maybe my job will no longer be there, I'll be given the pink slip. Maybe I'll get laid off. So the person, actually everybody today is so worried about the future that nobody is living in the present moment. Even those who have got affluence or got some opulences, still they are not able to enjoy. Why? Because they are full sada samudvigna dhyam asadgrahat. Because of having accepted this false material life as the truth and the false pleasures as the true pleasure, having accepted that at every moment a person has to be anxious for their own gain and safety. Whereas a devotee is nirdvandvo nitya sattvasto, nirdvandvo nitya sattvasto, niryogakshema atmavan. So niryoga kshemam has been translated in this verse as without fear for gain or safety. So a devotee has absolutely no fear for his own safety, absolutely no fear, no anxiety for his own gain. There's no need for him to be anxious. Does not mean that he does not work. He's working always. But he's not anxious that will I be safe, will my retirement be safe, will tomorrow my job will remain or not, will I get promoted on time, how will my children go to get their education. Doesn't care about any of that. The example that has always been given by Srila Prabhupada is like the mouse that is being carried by the cat versus the kitten that are being carried by the cat. So the cat carries the kitten in its mouth, and the cat carries the mouse also in its mouth, whereas a mouse is feeling death, fear in the teeth of the predator cat. It sees cat as a predator and it's fearful for its life. But the kitten feels safety even though it's the same mouth. So similarly, when a devotee is leaving the body, for a devotee, the devotee feels protection by the Lord. He has absolutely no worry. Nirdvandvo nitya sattvasto niryogakshema atmavan. So that's what Prabhupada is clarifying. But those who are not unalloyed devotees, so now you see triple negative, not unalloyed devotee, right? So what does it mean? Impure devotees, all of us. But it is not that, like for us, our objective is to become unalloyed devotees, correct? But then there is a qualifier. Yes, we are all in that category. But on top of that, amongst those unalloyed, those non-unalloyed devotees, which means alloyed devotees, impure devotees, those of them who depend on such methods of spiritual realization as karma yoga, jnana yoga, hatha yoga. Fortunately, we are not in that category. Right? We may be impure devotees, but we are not relying on those methods for our spiritual realization. And therefore, we are trying to get purified and become unalloyed devotees of the Lord. But those who are not in this path, and those who are trying to progress in karma yoga, jnana yoga, hatha yoga, etc., they must leave their body at a suitable time, and thereby be assured whether or not they will return to this world of birth and death. So the people in general, they belong to three categories: karmis, and then those who are endeavoring for perfection through the process of jnana yoga, karma yoga, or hatha yoga, and then they are devotees. The devotees may be pure or they may be not pure yet, but regardless, they have not taken to, they have given up the process of jnana yoga, karma yoga, hatha yoga, etc. They have jnana karmadi anavritam. They have given it up. Although in the process of bhakti, they are still not fully determined. But because they have taken the right train or the right bus, their reaching the destination is assured. If you are taking the bus which is going to Westboro, what is that train? What is the train station? Commuter rail, Westboro commuter rail station. If you have sat in the bus for Westboro commuter rail station, will you expect to reach Worcester? You will not reach. There's no danger of that, correct? Unless even if you fall asleep, the bus will go and stop there, somebody will wake you up. So having taken to this bus, which is taking us to become unalloyed devotee of the Lord, and thereby to become a pure devotee in future, we need not worry about what is being described here, but we should be aware that what is the difficulty, how much of a discounted process we are getting, just how much of a mercy we are receiving by the Lord, that such a complicated and dangerous thing has been waved off for us. The entire thing has been waved off. Like, those who are, recently there was a budget introduced in the Indian Parliament. They have raised the waiver for taxation, right? There is a certain limit income. If you are below that income limit, you don't have to pay taxes. That limit has been raised. So all those who are below that income limit, they need not be worried because their tax has been waived off. They're already struggling for their livelihood, so they need not worry about the tax. Similarly, one person who is struggling to please the Lord, for him these kind of obstacles have been removed. But if somebody is denying the very existence of the Lord, the personal feature of the Lord, and is trying to understand the Lord's energy by his own dint of his own personal efforts, by following the process of jnana yoga or karma yoga or hatha yoga, which are all other processes which are not, which are the processes that deny the personal feature of the Lord. But if they go through that process, then the bar for them to succeed is much, much higher. So for them, there is a concept of auspicious time or inauspicious time. So they must choose. Now, a person who is very, very advanced in these processes may be able to choose the time of passing away, who's achieved perfection in the process of Hatha Yoga, certainly can choose the time of passing away and can choose a auspicious time, which will be described in the next verses as to what those auspicious times are. But that person can choose. But if a person is not even taken to any transcendental process, any process of self-realization, simply carrying on his life like animals, animalistic life, like hogs and dogs, just living on the principle of eat, drink and make merry, just eating, sleeping, mating and defending. On this principle, if somebody is living, then for such karmis, it is said, there is no such thing as auspicious time. Such a person is assured that that person will always be put in hellish conditions, whether in this world or another world, may not even be assured of a human body and has to undergo all kinds of tribulations. So for karmis, there is no concept of an auspicious time of passing away. Now, somebody may ask, wait a minute, we have heard that there are some specific sale events even for karmis, such as, for example, the Mahakumbha Mela. Once in every 12 years it occurs, Mahakumbha, in the place where the Triveni, where Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati meet. If somebody takes a dip in the river at the time of Mahakumbha, it is considered extremely auspicious, and a person is said to achieve liberation at the end of the life if they have taken a dip in that river, in the Sangamam, at that specific time of Mahakumbha. But actually, the reality is that yes, a karmi who has been leading a sinful life, if somehow by the mercy of some pious person, they are taken to Mahakumbha at the time, and they somehow get into their mind that yes, let me take a dip in the river at this time. Oh, after all, I can go on sinning. I've got this facility, so let me take full advantage. And even the night before I go take the dip, I'll go be drinking, taking all-night party. Anyway, tomorrow I'm going to take a dip. Nothing for me to do. What happens to such a person? So the answer is that for such a person, this facility is an opportunity, not a guarantee. It is an eligibility. So even a most sinner who is there, highest sinner, if he takes bath, take dip in the Triveni Sangamam at the time of Mahakumbh, he becomes eligible for liberation. But he may not want liberation. Liberation is not forced upon anybody. Nobody is forcibly dragged from the material world and say, no, you must get liberated. No, that doesn't happen. If the person actually wants to enjoy, the moment he comes out of the bath, if he comes out of the dip from Triveni, immediately he starts beginning to look for sense gratification. So he does not want to be liberated, correct? So he will not be dragged into liberation. He will be given full opportunity for enjoyment, which is nothing but suffering. So for a karmi, there is no such thing as an auspicious time. For a jnani or karma yogi or hatha yogi or those who are taken to these different processes of self-realization, for them, if they are advanced, they can choose. But if they are not so advanced, then the time factor will act upon them, and it may not be in their hands when they pass away. And we will see in subsequent verses from Bhagavad Gita what are those times, and at which by passing away one may return or one may not return. So this time factor has been mentioned several places in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita also. Let us take a closer look at what this time factor is. For those of you who are familiar with Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada's disappearance was on November 14th, 1977. And Srila Prabhupada was translating Srimad Bhagavatam till the very last minute of his passing away. It is an incredible, unbelievable for an ordinary person, how a person can be translating and be so clear-minded until the last moment of his breath. But Srila Prabhupada himself has written various commentaries that a pure devotee's mind always remains perfectly clear and healthy and pure, unadulterated. A pure devotee's mind is never polluted, never contaminated, even at the time of death. Srila Prabhupada's thinking and writing were so concise even till the last minute that when we are trying to understand this concept of time, I happened to look at some of the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam that Srila Prabhupada was translating towards the end of his time here in this planet. For those of you who may not be aware, the last verse that Srila Prabhupada translated was in the 10th canto, 13th chapter, 64th verse, which is basically the end of the chapter. So he has translated the 13th chapter of 10th canto. This chapter deals with Brahma Vimohana Leela. It is a time when Lord Brahma was bewildered by the Leela of the Lord. He thought Krishna was an ordinary boy, stole his the cowherd boys and calves and hid them somewhere. This is a Leela. And the last verse is 64th verse, if I remember correctly. And I would like to read some of the translations from a few verses before that, which means at this point Prabhupada was bedridden. He is having just some Charanamrit once a day. He is not having any solids at all for several weeks, if not months. His body is extremely weak, and you will see the clarity of the translation. And I also read portions of a purport that talks about time. And let us try to understand from this pure devotee what is time. First, I'll read some translations. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 13th chapter, 46th verse. So this is 18 verses prior to the last verse of the chapter. So this is happening when Lord Brahma has stolen all the calves and cowherd boys, and then he comes back. Meanwhile, 1 year has passed on earth. And how much time has passed in Brahmaloka? Just a moment. In the 1 day is in there, you're good. It's a good guess, because in the planet of the demigods, one day would have passed. But Brahmaloka is even higher. So there, it's even lesser time. In the scriptures, it is just described a moment. Just a few moments of time have passed. Very, very less amount of time has passed. So he looks like that, comes back, looks like this. 1 year has passed on earth. So he comes down and he's expecting that Krishna, this little boy, he would be a lot of chaos would be there. So many boys are missing. Their mothers will be completely bewildered by that. They would be crying. The scene would be very bad. But actually he came and saw that everybody was happy. So then, just as he was looking on, suddenly, okay, now this verse, let me read the translation. Then, while Lord Brahma looked on, all the calves and the boys tending them immediately appeared to have complexions the color of bluish rain clouds, and to be dressed in yellow silken garments. All those personalities, this is the next verse, verse 47 and 48, translation. All those personalities had 4 arms, holding conch shell, disc, mace, and lotus flower in their hands. They wore helmets on their heads, earrings on their ears, and garlands of forest flowers around their necks. On the upper portion of the right side of their chest was the emblem of the goddess of fortune. Furthermore, they wore armlets on their arms, Kaustubha gem around their necks, which were marked with 3 lines like a conch shell, and bracelets on their wrists. With bangles on their ankles, ornaments on their feet, and sacred belts around their waist, they all appeared very beautiful. Next verse. Every part of their bodies, from their feet to the top of their heads, was fully decorated with fresh, tender garlands of tulasi leaves offered by devotees engaged in worshipping the Lord by the greatest pious activities, namely hearing and chanting. And then the text 50. Those Vishnu forms, by their pure smiling, which resembled the increasing light of the moon, and by sidelong glances of the reddish eyes, created and protected the desires of their own devotees, as if by the modes of passion and goodness. Then the verse 51, and please be patient with me, just 2 more verses and I'll read the purport, which explains about time. 51st verse. All beings, both moving and non-moving, from the 4-headed Lord Brahma down to the most insignificant living entity, had taken forms and were differently worshipping these Vishnu Murtis according to their respective capacities with various means of worship such as dancing and singing. So as Brahma is looking, all the calves and the cowherd boys, they've all become Vishnu Murtis, beautifully dressed in yellow garments, very nicely decorated, full of, they have got tulasi on their body, just as devotees have worshipped them with tulasi like that. Tulsi leaves have fallen on them. It's looking like that. And then all the living beings are worshipping them in their own different ways. And Prabhupada explains in the purport how the mood of a Mahabhagavata, he sees everybody as a devotee. A Mahabhagavata sees everybody as a devotee. So even though persons in order to preach from the stage of Mahabhagavata, one must come to Madhyamadhikari state so that one may differentiate between a devotee and a non-devotee. So it is necessary for preaching purposes to speak from the platform of Madhyamadhikari. But here Prabhupada is revealing his own position as a Mahabhagavata and saying that Lord Brahma at that point had seen the Lord face to face, and he is seeing from his Mahabhagavata vision that everybody is worshipping the Lord in their own ways. And then verse 52, all the Vishnu Murtis were surrounded by the opulences headed by Anima Siddhi, by the mystic opulences headed by Aja, and by the 24 elements for the creation of the world, material world, headed by the Mahat Tattva. So the Vishnu Murtis were surrounded by the opulences, including the elements, 24 elements of material creations. We'll not go into the details of what the 24 elements are. We all know that. Panchakarma, 5 karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, right? We have been through all of that before. Now comes the verse that I really wanted to read, the 53rd verse. So 10.13.53. The verse says, Kala swabhava samskara kama karma gunadhibhi swamahi dvastamaha mahibhir murtimadbhir upasitaham. Kala swabhava samskara kama karma guna adhibhihi. That is, let me read the translation, I think it will become more clearer. Then Lord Brahma saw that Kala, the time factor, Swabhava, one's own nature by association, Samskara, reformation, Kama, desire, Karma, fruitive activity, and the Gunas, the 3 modes of material nature, their own independence being completely subordinate to the potency of the Lord, had all taken forms and were also worshipping those Vishnu Murtis. So Lord Brahma is seeing that Kala has become personified and is worshipping the Vishnu Murti. In other words, Kala, or the time factor, is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. And who else is subordinate? Swabhava, Samskara. So there is these attributes Prabhupada is explaining, that Swabhava, Kama, Samskara, Karma and Guna, which I just read, they are actually subordinates of time factor, and together they are all subordinates of the Lord. So the Supreme Lord subordinate is Kala, and Kala subordinates are Swabhava, Kama, Samskara, Karma and Guna. And so Prabhupada is writing in the purport, let me just read some portions of the purport. No one but Vishnu has any independence. If we develop consciousness of this fact, then we are in actual Krishna consciousness. We should always remember that Krishna is the only Supreme Master and that everyone else is his servant. Ekala, Ishvara, Krishna or Sab-Bhritya. Be one even Narayana or Lord Shiva, everyone is subordinate to Krishna. Shiva Virinchi Nutanam. Even Balarama, Baladeva, is subordinate to Krishna. This is a fact. One should understand that no one is independent, for everything is part and parcel of Krishna and is acting and moving by the supreme desire of Krishna. This understanding, this consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So just see the clarity of his purports. On practically, it is just this is verse number 53. Verse 53. Just 11 verses prior to verse 64, which was the last verse. And anyone who has seen the very difficult to watch video showing the passing away of Srila Prabhupada shows that he is translating Bhagavatam even unto the last breath. So just a few days before his passing away, just look at the clarity of his speech. Then he says, Kala, or the time factor, has many assistants, such as Swabhava, Samskara, Kama, Karma and Guna. So a little bit more about this. Swabhava, or one's own nature is formed in association with guna. So out of these, swabhava and guna are interrelated. Okay. So he says, Prabhupada says, one's own nature, swabhava means one's own nature, is formed according to the association with material qualities. The swabhava is of two categories, sat and asat. So sat and asat swabhava, one's higher or lower nature, is formed by association with different qualities, namely sattva guna, rajo guna and tamo guna. And Prabhupada is saying that we should gradually come to the sattva guna so that we may avoid the two lower gunas. This can be done if we regularly discuss Srimad Bhagavatam and hear about Krishna's activities. And we all know about the verse, Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya, right? So all the abhadras in the heart, which are indicative of the lower nature, lower modes of nature, they get cleansed. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. All the activities of Krishna described in Srimad Bhagavatam, beginning even with the pastimes concerning Putana, are transcendental. So just see the clarity, like it is not, he doesn't even have to think for a moment that where the Krishna's activities are starting. Just because somebody is, is killing Putana's demon, you may think that, oh, this is not the main thing. But everything is transcendental and he has no difficulty in recollecting which was the first demon that was killed. Therefore, by hearing and discussing Bhagavatam, the Rajoguna and Tamoguna are subdued, and then only Sattvaguna remains. So, Swabhava and Guna are interrelated, and Swabhava has got two varieties, Sat Swabhava and Asat Swabhava. So, Sat Swabhava can be attained by gradually eliminating the Rajoguna and Tamoguna, by associating with Sattvaguna, and how that is done? By regular hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam. Then of course, there is, he talks about the verse, Tada rajas tamo bhava kama lobhadayas chete eter anavidhim sitam sattve prasidati. There is another evidence for the same principle that we talked about. So then he talks about the samskara or reformation. But before that, there are many more points that he makes. I'm not reading everything for lack of time. But let us now talk about samskara. So samskara is reformation, purification. And Prabhupada says that this is possible by good association. For by good association, one develops good habits. And habit becomes second nature. So the swabhava that we talked about earlier, see how that is related with samskara. So when we have a good association, reformation, how that happens, how the reformation happens, by good association one develops good habits, and by good habits that becomes a second nature. So that is another aspect. So for this, Prabhupada is giving the, so possible by good association one develops good habits, and habit becomes second nature. Prabhupada gives the example of the song, the one that we sing in Mangalarti, Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. So in that there is one verse, Tadera Charana Sebi Bhakta Sane Bas Janame Hoye Abhilash. So Prabhupada says, therefore, Bhakta Sane Vas. Let people have the chance to live with bhaktas. Then their habits will change. So when we actually spend our life, when you say live with, for those who are in the ashram, of course they are living with bhaktas. But even those who are outside ashram, in their heart, they should be living with bhaktas. In their heart, living with bhakta means associating in the heart for having open heart and friendship with the bhaktas, and being open-hearted means receptive to the instructions coming from the bhaktas. Molding our life, changing our life, taking steps to mold our lives in such a way that we are able to execute the instructions given by the bhaktas. That is the process of associating or living with bhakta. What it means for somebody who's living outside means molding our life in such a way that it becomes possible to execute the instructions given by those bhaktas. So Prabhupada further says that in the human form of life, one has this chance, right? So only in human form we have this chance. But as Narottam Das Thakur sings, Hari Hari Biphale Janama Gunaino. If we do not do this, then Hari Hari Biphale Janama. Janama becomes vipale or fruitless. If one fails to take advantage of this opportunity, then one's human life is wasted. Therefore, we are trying to save human society from degradation and actually elevate people to higher nature. Then he's talking about the other two aspects, kama and karma, desires and activities. And Prabhupada says, if one engages in devotional service, one develops a different nature than if one engages in activities of sense gratification. And of course, the result is also different. According to the association of different natures, one receives a particular type of body. So, karma. So, depending on your kama and karma, you get a certain type of body. Karanam gunasangosya sadasajjoni janmashu. So, the way in which you associate with the modes of material nature, based on that, you get a body. So, if your karma and karma, based on that, you will get the type of body, and that determines your nature. Just see how all are interrelated. Therefore, we should always seek good association, the association of devotees. Then our life will be successful. A man is known by his company. If one has a chance to live in the good association of the devotees, one is able to cultivate knowledge, and naturally one's character or nature will change for one's eternal benefit. So, this is a wonderful description of time and how Kala has got these 5 elements that are subordinates to Kala: Swabhava, Kama, Samskara, Karma and Guna, and how these are all interrelated. Prabhupada explains that the entire material cosmic manifestation actually is coming from Kala. And Kala is what separates, is a link between the spiritual world and the material world. Because all the activities that are performed in the material world, we are able to experience them only because of Kala. Although Kala itself is independent and eternal, but through the agency of Kala, we are able to experience the material world. Had it not been for Kala, the entire cosmic material world in which we are experiencing Sukha and Dukkha would not be possible. So Kala is an extremely important element of the material creation. In fact, is the origin of the material creation. And it is Kala that agitates the origins of the material creation. And that is how the secondary creation happens. So, so we have studied that Kala is subordinate to the Lord, and therefore, as Kala or material nature is, just as material nature does not act upon the unalloyed devotee of the Lord, similarly Kala also does not act upon the unalloyed devotee of the Lord. And that is why it is said that in the unalloyed devotee of the Lord is already in a liberated state. So unalloyed devotee of the Lord is already in a liberated state, means that the person is beyond the impact of time. So the person does not have to consider whether it's sometimes auspicious time or inauspicious time. There is this interesting verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have seen this before also, that that describes how a devotee should look at time. Whether it's auspicious or inauspicious, how should one look at inauspicious time? A lot of times in our family, people say, oh, don't go at this time, Rahu Kalam. Your work will not be successful. Even though you are doing devotional service, why don't you wait till a more auspicious time comes and then you can do? Or if you're trying to book a ticket to go somewhere, immediately somebody in the family will say, oh, why is he booking the time in this ticket in Rahu Kalam? You don't go like this, something will happen, you'll get accident, don't go. Then it becomes difficult, like you don't want to upset that person, right? But it doesn't affect. But you don't have scientific basis to say it won't affect me, correct? What is the scientific basis? Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita by Lord Chaitanya. He says, Dvaite bhadra bhadra jnana shabd sab manodharma ye bhala ye manda ye sab bhrama. So he's saying that this concept that in the material world there is something called auspicious and something called inauspicious is complete mental concoction. Actually, there is no auspicious time at all. If you are undertaking any materialistic activity, ordinary life that you are trying to live for sense gratification, there cannot be anything auspicious in that. You may try to avoid all kinds of Rahu Kalam, Ketu Kalam, Kuliyai Kalam, whatever it may be, but you cannot avoid inauspiciousness. It is in the nature of your thought. It is the nature of your intent. The moment you have intended to please your senses, it is lust. The moment you have intended to please Krishna, it is love. So lust is always inauspicious, there is nothing you can do about it. So always have this very firm in our mind, Bhadra Bhadra Jnana Sava Manodharma, Ye Bhala Ye Manda, ye sab bhrama. So it does not apply to us, this concept of time, kala, it does not act upon a devotee. Now in the purport there is mention of Baladev Vidyabhushana. It is said that Baladev Vidyabhushana is referring to the word kala in the verse as the presiding deity of time. So basically in the material realm there are time, as time passes there are different devatas that are responsible for different periods of time. So the presiding deity of time is referring to that. But let us take this opportunity to understand a little bit about and familiarize ourselves with the contribution of Baladev Vidyabhushana first. Because rather than that one line, which may or may not make much sense to us, at least let us try to appreciate the contribution of this great Vaishnavacharya. So does anybody know where this particular sentence appears? The sentence is written by Srila Prabhupada. The sentence is, to Srila Baladeva Vidyabhushana, who presented so nicely the Govinda Bhashya commentary on Vedanta philosophy. Where does this sentence occur? Yes, Prabhu? Dedication of what? Of Bhagavad Gita. Yes, you're right. So dedication of Bhagavad Gita. So if you open Bhagavad Gita book, there is initially, right in the beginning, there is a page called dedication. And so the entire Bhagavad Gita as it is has been dedicated to Srila Baladeva Vidyabhushana. So let us see who is this Baladeva Vidyabhushana. In the 18th century, it was perhaps, if I remember correctly, 1730 or 1720, something around that time, there was an incident wherein a sect of persons by the name Ramanandis, they went and made a complaint, lodged a complaint to the then Raja of Jaipur, the king of Jaipur. At the time, Baladev, the Govind Devji temple in Jaipur was under the care of devotees following the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. They were managing the temple affairs of Govind Devji temple in Jaipur, and the king himself was initiated into the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, and he was very much favorable to that. However, these disciples of following Sri Sampradaya, that particular sect was called Ramanandis. They went and lodged a complaint. They said that these Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya devotees, they are not an authorized Sampradaya at all. They call themselves as a distinct Sampradaya called Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but they do not have something which is most essential for a Sampradaya to be called as a distinctive Sampradaya. And then the king asked, yeah, really, what is that? Because they appear to be like very good devotees, they're taking very good care of the temple, very dedicated, very sincere. What is it that is lacking? So the Ramanandi said, they do not have a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And their argument was that for a Sampradaya to be considered as an authorized Sampradaya, they must have a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So just for our knowledge, there is a commentary on Vedanta Sutra in other Sampradayas. So let us see what they are, just so we are aware. So on the leftmost, can you recognize who is that Acharya? Do you know? Shreya Prabhu? Ramanujacharya, yes. So that is Ramanujacharya. And are you aware of what is the name of the commentary on Vedanta Sutra that was written by Sri Ramanujacharya, or in that Sampradaya? Sri Bhashyam. It is called Sri Bhashyam. So Sri Bhashyam is the commentary written by Ramanujacharya on Vedanta Sutra. It is a tradition that Vedanta Sutra is the end of all Vedic knowledge. It is the essence of all the Vedic knowledge, and therefore it is argued by the followers of Ramanujacharya that, look, unless you have this, you are not even a Sampradaya. So now, who's the next person who's there, personality who's there, the second personality in the image? Does anybody know? Adi Shankara. So the second personality is Adi Shankara. So what is the name of the commentary that Adi Shankara wrote on Vedanta Sutra. Sharirika Bhashyam. It is called Sharirika Bhashyam. So who is the next personality? Madhvacharya. Yes. And what is the name of the commentary that Madhvacharya wrote on Vedanta Sutra? Easy ones you all got. No, they're called Tattvavadis, but that is not the name of the commentary. It is called Purna Pragya Bhashyam. Purna Pragya Bhashyam. Yeah, it's a curveball. You do not know. Okay, who is the next personality in that? Nimbarkacharya. Yes. What is the name of the commentary written by Nimbarkacharya? Parijata Saurabha Bhashyam. It is called Parijata Saurabha Bhashyam. So, all these names are mentioned in the in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, it is. So I'm sorry. I'm not sure if it's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It is in the description of the pastimes of Baladev Vidyabhushana, wherever it is there. That is where it is described. No, I'm not certain that it is in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So all these acharyas have written these commentaries, and Baladev, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, did not exist at the time. So immediately the king called for Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura was an exalted Vaishnava acharya at the time, and he was in Vrindavan. So from Jaipur, Vrindavan is very nearby. So he sent a message, please send me the commentary on Vedanta Sutra from our Sampradaya, so that it may be given to the Ramanandis. Now Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura, at the time, of course, there was no such commentary. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura was very aged at the time. So what he did, he sent his young, brilliant Vaishnava to answer this challenge. And who was that person? It was none other than Sri Baladev Vidyabhushana. So Baladev Vidyabhushana was sent to Jaipur, and he went there, and he brilliantly argued with the Ramanandis. His argument was that there is no need for a separate commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, because the author of the Vedanta Sutra, who is the author of Vedanta Sutra? Vyasadeva. So the author of Vedanta Sutra has himself written a commentary, so that you don't have to write. So he only wrote the Vedanta Sutra, he himself wrote that commentary. And what is the name of that commentary? Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, he argued, is a natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. Just see the first verse. Janmadyasya yato invayaditratascharthesha abhigyaswarat tene brahma hridayadi kavaye muhyanti yatsuraya. So the verse is starting from Janmadyasya yataha, which is also the way in which Vedanta Sutra starts. Janmadyasya yataha. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentary. There are several other evidences that were quoted from Shat Sandarbha. There is a work called Shat Sandarbha written by Jiva Goswami, and actually Baladev Vidyabhushana was an expert in that literature. When Baladev Vidyabhushana, previous to coming into Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, he was in Madhvacharya Sampradaya as a Tattvavadi. Then in his travels he came to Jagannath Puri, and that's where he met the Gaudiya Vaishnava acharyas who were there at the time. And then he heard their arguments, and he was very much impressed by them, and after that he completely took to the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And one of the things that he immediately did after that was to start studying Jiva Goswami's work on Shat Sandarbha. So he was a great exponent of and he knew all those works inside out. So he explained those points to the Ramanandis, but they would not listen. They said, look, and they made fun of him. Look, he basically does not have a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, and he's giving all kinds of excuses. Look, if you don't have the commentary, just hand over the temple to us. We will run it. This was their argument. So now Baladev Vidyabhushana was very much aggrieved by this, and he went to Govind Dev Ji in Jaipur itself. And was it in Jaipur or Vrindavan? I'm not so sure. Jaipur only, yes. And he described related all the events that have happened, and requested Govind Dev Ji for solution. So immediately at the time, there was a flower garland that fell. So So before that, the king had ordered him. The king ordered Baldev Vidyabhushana that now you must write the commentary, and you must write it immediately because there is not enough time. They will not be waiting for 10 years and all. Immediately you have to write and produce it. So upon the order of the king, he went to the Govind Devji Mandir and he placed his problems in front of the deity, and the deity they gave him a flower garland as a symbol of acceptance. And at that time, Govind Devji himself indicated to him that he would help him write the commentary. So it is said that Govind Devji himself, inspired by Govind Devji, Baldev Vidyabhushana composed the commentary on Vedanta Sutra in a very, very, very short time. And when the commentary was given, placed with the Ramanandis, they were stunned. The commentary was so nicely written, so eloquent, and it's very different from what they had studied thus far. Very original and completely justifying the position that Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya was taking. So at that time they admitted defeat and they wanted to become his disciples. But Sri Baldev Vidyabhushana said that no, that is not correct. Sri Sampradaya is very respected, so therefore they should not abandon their Sampradaya. It's an authorized Sampradaya. They should not abandon that. So he refused to take them as his disciples and allowed them to continue. But then when he related these events to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura, he was delighted by the events that had unfolded, and ever since then the entire Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya has been deeply indebted to Sri Baldev Vidyabhushana, and Srila Prabhupada is always quoting from his works and referencing them in his commentaries. So with this, I'll stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. So, yes, Prabhu.
Swabhava, Prabhu, it changes when devotees come, like
Yes.
they come to bhakti.
Yes, it changes. Swabhava changes. So the word Swabhava is used in Bhagavatam with reference to, it is not to be confused with constitutional position of a person. The constitutional position is different. That is a different word. This Swabhava is used in the context of one's nature, material nature, which is changeable depending upon one's association with the gunas. One's nature changes. Prabhupada also gives the example of a dog. There is a king once who declared that from now on this dog will be the king. So as soon as the crown was placed on the dog immediately took one major decision. What was that? Whoa! That's all. What will the dog do? You can make the dog the king, but it is going to bark. That is a nature. So Prabhupada gives the example of a dog to indicate the swabhava. Every jiva has a swabhava. So there is a certain aspect of the swabhava which has been given to you because of the body, the species that you are born in. Karanam gunasangosya sadasajoni janmashu. That cannot be changed in our lifetime. Correct? I have been given a certain kind of body. I cannot suddenly sing like a Tansen. Right? It is not going to happen in this lifetime. Nor can I run like Milka Singh. Not going to happen. Right? So there are some limitations to what we can do, what our nature, with our nature, what we can do. But there are many things that are changeable. For example, the nature of certain qualities like maybe anger and short temper or disappointment. Things because we have got the anticipation that, oh, I must get this. Therefore, when it's not coming, we become disappointed. So nature is to become easily disappointed. But when we come in Krishna consciousness, we understand that everything is a plan of the Lord. And therefore, we are not disappointed anymore. So nature changes. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, as you have explained that, like, if any sinful person dip into the Triveni and after just dipping, so he is actually eligible for liberation. But due to the association of the material and due to the tendency of sinful activities, he same case has been applicable once any person chants the name of the Lord Hari, so he is actually means able to get the liberation. But the same case, like he is actually doesn't want to get the liberation and he is actually indulging into the sinful activities, so he has to again come back. So is this the same case, Prabhu?
Here there is a quality of chanting that also matters. So when you take the name Hari, if a person takes the name of the Lord in complete helplessness and complete dependence, then after that he becomes fully purified. But yes, if after that he falls down, it's a different matter, but he will not. According to the scriptures, if you're in a helpless condition, if you chant the name of the Lord, that's it. You don't come back, you don't fall down after that. But our problem is we don't chant with that quality of helplessness. That is why, because our mind-body system is not fully aligned with the chanting, so you're not actually chanting. We have got our lips, throat that produces a sound. Okay, that is one chanting. Then there is also the mind that has to chant along with that, and here. So because that helplessness is missing, therefore it is not the same quality. But it is also said that it is a great offense to commit sinful activities on the strength of the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. It is one of the 10 offenses, correct? So what it means is that in the offensive stage of chanting, it is possible for us to commit offenses. That is point number 1. That is called offensive stage of chanting by definition. So in that offensive stage, when you commit those offenses of continuing to have material attachments, then your progress is slower. But if a person is inoffensively chanting, then there is no question of offensive stage after that. So there is no question of having material desires to enjoy after that, because you have reached the point of inoffensive chanting. In the scriptures where it says that even by simply chanting Hari once or Narayana once, when a person is liberated, that is referring to inoffensive chanting. Inoffensively taking the name of the Lord will get you to that point. Offensively chanting is still highly beneficial. It's a permanent spiritual asset. And even if a person were to abandon the chanting at that point in time, whenever the person resumes, he resumes from that same point of offensive chanting. So it's a process of cleansing, gradual process of cleansing. But just to clarify again, inoffensive chanting is equal to surrender to the Lord. In an instant, when Prabhupada says, right, in an instant you can surrender, that is referring to inoffensive chanting and taking the holy name of the Lord. At that point you have fully surrendered. Such a person will not have any desire to enjoy senses after that. Any other questions? Yes, Prabhu.
In the purport it says, but if he is not so expert, his success depends on his accidentally passing away at a certain suitable time.
Yes.
And just to elaborate this point, connecting this with the next verse purport, their purport says, he says, if one leaves the body at the time designated above, either accidentally or by arrangement, it is possible for him to attain the impersonal Brahmajyoti.
Yes.
So accidentally, how do we understand this, Prabhu? Because we know that jivas, finally they attain the destination based on their exercise of free will. So accidentally,
a person who is sincerely endeavoring for spiritual, for self-realization, right? So in his heart, he actually wants to become free from material entanglement, but he's not perfect. He's not perfect. Just like Prabhupada says, that you do your 16 rounds of chanting, and you do what I'm telling you to do. If something is lacking, I will take care. Krishna is saying, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja, aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma sucha. So basically, if you are following a process, an authorized process, which may not be leading to pure devotion, but it is leading to self-realization, identifying oneself as a spirit soul, but one may not have attained perfection in that. But accidentally, it is possible that for such a person, he may leave the body at a time which is considered to be auspicious for that. It is possible. Now you may ask, but nothing happens by chance. Somebody is orchestrating this. Why that person is orchestrating for him and not for me? It is accidental. That's all, nothing more. Kono Bhagyavan Jiva, they also have one concept of Bhagyavan Jiva. But their Bhagyavan Jiva is this accidental passing away, which nobody has any control. Our Bhagyavan Jiva is meeting pure devotee. Same question can be asked. Why is a sinful person meeting a pure devotee, another sinful person not meeting pure devotee? Why? Why? Bhagyavan Jiva. That's all. Grantra Srimad Bhagavad Gita